Hi, Ariel.
Hello.
Just topping up my tea. Abdullah, hi. And Mark.
Hello. Hello, hello.
You have a nice time away?
Oh my God, I'm still massively jet lagged, so kind of have to excuse me if I'm not going to be on my top performer. I wake up at midnight and then I am a wreck by
Where were
late
you and where are you
morning.
now?
I'm back home. I'm in Seattle.
In where? In Seattle.
I'm
But
in
where were
Seattle.
you then?
Oh, I was in Madrid for ITF, and then I spent a week sailing in the Greek Isles. I'm now certified
How awful for you.
skipper. So
Good.
if you have a sailboat, I can skipper it for you.
Good.
I wouldn't
a number of
recommend it,
friends
but
who
I
have
can.
such a thing. Oh, okay. I have friends who've done it quite a lot, so maybe not start with you then.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's get started. I'm going to give a couple of minutes to those who want to join, but in the meantime, I spent this morning, since I've had about 6 hours already, putting together our meeting minutes. And let's see. There you go. Oh. Now we should be able to see the screen now.
Yep, there it is.
All right. I want more folks who have attended IATF to join, so we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about that.
Briefly looked over the meeting minutes over a couple of meetings that I missed in July. So the short meeting minutes are down here, but just wanted to see if
yeah, so I attended one of them. I'm going to try to start attending more of these if I can. I have a number of clashes, but I'm trying to clear some things out.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It'd be good to get back up to speed with what's going on.
Sweet. Okay. So anyway, so over here I have my list of links that pertain to the goings on of the ATF, and then a couple other things I wanted to discuss. Let's see what's in the chat. The link to the meeting minutes. Yes, Abdullah. I'm gonna put that up right now. There you go. And, if you don't have access, it comes into my Gmail, which I have open on my other screen. So just request it if you don't seem to.
Yes, certain companies also do not allow direct access, so people like to have secondary email addresses.
Right, that's certainly the case for me. I cannot use my work account to do anything Gmail related. Okay.
Because that would be too easy, wouldn't it, Mark?
Yes. All right. Okay. And we'll need to ping the mailing list to make sure more people join. Hi, Zvonko. Good to see you back. Hi, Ariel. Okay, 5 minutes past the hour, so let's get started. So let me just go over a few things that I can cover quickly. So it occurred to me effectively, a day before I was slated to present our IETF draft, that really what we were not asking for were IETF extensions. We're not really asking to extend much. Now, you may think differently. Please feel free to speak up. But what we wanted to talk about was that, trustworthy workload identity is broadly compatible with Whimsy, but, make sure that the following things continue to be true. And the one big difference that needs to be highlighted and handled was that the Whimsy architecture, despite saying that it's credential acquisition agnostic, does mention the agent in its architecture. So it's an agent is effectively how you procure the credentials. And the unfortunate part of that is, unless you're very careful, an agent is not compatible with confidential computing because, it seems like it's external to the workload. And then, of course, the workload needs to attest itself. So I raised that point, and I specifically had a couple of side conversations with folks from Spiffy, from Spiral. So with Peter Castleman and with Arndt, the complicated German name that I don't want to butcher. So I secured an agreement with Arndt that he would update us on how Spiffy plans to handle the fact that Workload API and Spiffy are parameterless, and as a result do not allow for submission of a quote or anything like that. And apparently they do have something like that in their backlog, in their pipeline, and just haven't gotten to it yet. So I will continue monitoring the conversations that they have, which is every couple of weeks on Thursday. And I hope to be there when these conversations start taking place. So that's the speaking update I wanted to give. So on Whimsy, I just want to, yes, Yogesh, hi.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, did you, because I didn't had much conversation with the Whimsy guys, did you manage to convey that we could have one kind of a profile of Whimsy for a specific use case setting of CCC? Will that be a possibility?
I do not believe it can be handled by a profile. Now, maybe it can, maybe I'm just not seeing it. But a profile is, does not address the fact that the workload API in Spiffy is parameterless. And because it is parameterless, it does not allow for the workload to communicate anything about itself like a quote. As a result, the agent must be attested. Well, unless you change something, agent must be attested as part of the workload. And I do not know how that jives with a profile, the way that Spiffy uses the profile.
What I mean by profile is it's like a specific setting of the common architecture. So Whimsy provides a common architecture, right, for workload
Yes.
identity. But we
Yes.
want that workload identity in a specific scene setting in a confidential computing environment where we have specific requirements which can be met by our profile. So it's a profile of the documentation with specific requirements added on top of the base provided by Whimsy. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Right. And that is something that we will need to continue engaging with Whimsy on to see just how are we going to make this work. And Spiffy just follows the Whimsy architecture, right? So,
Yes.
so we, we cannot really change anything in Spiffy without also having it somehow reflected in the Whimsy architecture. And that is the ongoing conversation we need to have. So I guess my high order bit coming out of IETF and attending like a good dozen different meetings and talking to folks offline was that all of our work needs to be done through these working groups, and the reference architecture we write needs to be a reflection of things, ways in which our goals can be achieved in these other reference architectures, in the Whimsy reference architecture, in the RATS reference architecture, and the various offshoots and working groups that those existing working groups are doing. So both trying to keep them on track as much as we can, and ensuring, and because I mean some of the things they're doing legitimately will not be compatible with computational computing. We can't stop it, and it would probably be a waste of political capital to try. However, there has always it needs to exist a way for us to be working, in some way with them. There cannot be something that completely precludes trustworthy workload identity. And sort of we have to take it on a case-by-case basis, and because of the amount of different number of different efforts that are taking place in these working groups, it's a fairly significant lift to keep track of it all. So just that what I took carried out of that meeting. So Yogesh, we'll need you here helping, like
Sure.
doing the big lift, and we'll need Hank on the RATS side as well.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he's not here today, but I'll message him after today and just ask him nicely to give us time. Okay. All right. So other things I wanted to mention. So identity practices draft, and I double check that with Peter Castleman, who is, I guess, he's the Whimsy chair as well, or very senior in the Whimsy group. Identity practices is backwards looking. And I provided links. You can just click on the links and read the drafts for yourself. I'm not going to be able to cover them all here. But it's very backward looking and basically says, this is how you can do it today. And I asked him whether we should be talking about sort of, identity practices around confidential computing. And well, his recommendation was not. But then that remains the question is, then how do we communicate the practices related to confidential computing? Well, I mean, we can raise the question again with the authors of that draft, or we can start authoring a parallel draft. Again, we'll need to decide which way to proceed. The changes to Whimsy architecture were not such that that should cause any cause for concern. I mean, a few tweaks to the architecture since the Bangkok ATF were discussed, but they're not really impactful to us. But the big thorn of agent remains, so that is, we'll just need to keep at it, I guess. And there was one draft that was discussed that I subsequently talked to the authors, and I was really unhappy with, and that was the verifiable geofencing. So my feedback to them was, you guys completely skipped past the architecture part of how to combine device attestation with workload attestation, and you went straight into design. There is no architecture. So your design is not part of any kind of architecture, and you should in fact be doing this as part of the RATS working group, not part of Whimsy. And I guess they took it to heart, but I'm not sure. Also, but it's kind of not a concern to us because I actually don't think it's going to go anywhere. Certainly not in Whimsy. And again, when I back channel to folks in Whimsy, they didn't feel it was the right place to be discussing it. But it's a fairly complex design without an overall architecture. So anyway, that's it on Whimsy. Anybody else got any thoughts specifically
Well,
on Whimsy?
I've got a question about the verifiable geofencing. Is our view that it's not possible at all, that we don't know how it would be done, or that it's not relevant to us?
Oh, I think it's quite possible, and it may in fact be desirable in some scenarios. Specifically, what I think is interesting about it is they talk about actual hardware capable of, I don't know, GPS. Like read the draft. It's very loaded. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Right, but it sounds like they came up with they came up with a solution. They documented the design of that solution. Now they want to standardize that solution. I just don't.
Do we think it's compatible with confidential computing?
I think it is, in a sense that if you have a device on your, if you have a component, okay, so there's some sort of a hardware component on your device that can provide certain, functionality to you, and you want to attest it as part of, and somehow have the result that attestation surface as a claim. Well, there is nothing inherently incompatible here with what we're doing. It's the way they're going about it. That again. There is now an effort started in RATS that is around composite attesting.
Yeah,
and there were.
If you think of it like as part of that, it could make sense.
I really think it needs to be part of that, and that's the feedback I gave them. That's what I mean by you skipped past the architecture and jumped right into design. Is because look, you are really part of this larger effort. You should fit what you're doing inside that
the context
effort.
of that.
Right, in the context of that architecture.
That's great, very helpful. Okay.
Right, so again, so anyway, now going back to RATS, this is where I believe majority of our focus needs to be, and we need to think about what it is that we might want to contribute to the next ITF in Montreal, and this is where again, between Yogesh and maybe Hank. I want to see how we're going to go about it. Now, let me focus specifically on one thing that I saw. Because, by the way, RATS does a lot of things that are not related to us. There is like, how do you supply bills of materials? And there is like a lot of stuff they're related to attestation, but not really related to identity, which, again, you listen to it, but you have nothing to contribute. But when it came to this attested TLS, that was somewhat contentious. And I kind of climbed on the ledge there because I thought it was a really bad idea. I was subsequently talked off the ledge via a couple of offline conversations. So I want to explain what went on. So when you read the attested TLS draft, you basically see that as part of the, well, I guess outside of the TLS exchange, there is a mechanism there to provide some additional information, in which case, maybe like a quote or something, that would then bind the attestation to that TLS channel. And there is a couple of ways of doing that. One is the background check model, and one is the passport model. And I basically said, look, if you're going to supply a quote as part of the attested TLS exchange, that requires your relying party to go verify your quote. And that means it needs to hit the verifier, or it needs to have the reference values cached to be able to validate the quote itself. And that is what I consider not deployable. Certainly not in by a large IT shop with lots and lots and lots of load on the verifier. And that actually continues to be true. However, the way I was talked off the ledge, and it was Thomas Fasari, and I sat down and kind of talk this through. Another way of doing this is, instead of submitting a quote as part of attested TLS, you submit attestation results. So in that case, your workload already hit the verifier, maybe it cached the results from the verifier, already has something, and it was able to present that. Now, in that case, it is deployable. I haven't thought through it to the very end to see how can this actually result in communicating identity of the workload to the relying party. But I mean, if attestation results are in a format that are, credential or some sort of identity, then perhaps it's possible. But that's something that we need to investigate just to be sure. But it's certainly not. I guess I came to realize that the background check model is probably going to have a real hard time in real world deployments, regardless of whether it's part of a tested TLS or not. Just because if your relying party needs to hit the verifier, you're in the world of hurt. It's like my key objection is it makes your verifier a dial tone service that really needs to be always on, always available. You can't ever take it down because your workloads start failing. And it's really, really hard to engineer, architect 5969 services.
Yeah, so that means that you therefore need credential management integration at the verifier level, or certainly higher up in the chain. Is that
effectively? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I guess my biggest gripe with RATs is RATs never thought about credentials. RATs has this concept of attestation results. And attestation, like the relationship between attestation results and credentials has never been defined. Maybe that is something that we can take to the Montreal ATF, like some kind of a proposal or an ask for that distinction to be made, or that unification to be made, or whatever. Because like RATs as an architecture stands on its own because it can wave it away and say, well, attestation results could be your credential. But like it never says that, so it becomes very vague and very much subject to, in the eye of the beholder. What exactly does this mean?
I think what you need, Mark, is a profile or some kind of an added document to say that how my attestation results can be utilized for issuing of credentials in a particular scene setting. Does that help?
Yeah. What binding type makes sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so our attestation results something you feed into your identity provider to give you back an actual credential, or attestation results a result of already talking, or maybe your verifier talking to an identity provider.
Yeah.
So yes,
under the covers,
but both of those, and that's
both of those.
Those are both options, and we need to decide how that would work, whether one of them doesn't work, all those sorts of things. Really interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So maybe we can author a draft that basically says here are two ways of utilizing RATs for identity.
Yes.
But I
That's a good point, actually.
I want to do it very much hand in hand with RATs because I don't want to surprise them. I don't want, because that would introduce friction and another quote unquote round trip.
I mean, I can be the gel Mark, because I'm here as well, and I'm in RATs, very active in RATs. So so I can be the bridge where I can help you land your. At least we can try and make a conscious effort to land this in RATs.
Yeah.
And it may be just sit as an informative document, if not a kind of an RFC. But if a draft exists which connects the credential issuance with the RATs architecture, that might be helpful to audience like you and your connections. So
and that is something that I think is and like there are all these other efforts in RATs that we want to make sure that it all is coherent, right? So even composite attestation, right? And composite attestation itself has two flavors. It has these are all the parts of the device in which my workload runs. So NIC, GPU, right, CPU, like all that. And composite attestation also handles the device attestation with workload attestation, broadly speaking, right, under which geofencing would fall. And this is why I'm very interested in the composite attestation work.
So
to
when you say the device attestation, do you mean is that the same
hosting
thing as
environment
platform attestation?
Yeah,
okay,
this is like these are all like these terms that we will need to decide in our domain-driven design sort of nick of the woods. What do we mean by platform? Is it the same as what Intel means by platform or no? Like we'll need to define these terms. But right now, I'm loosely saying there is workload attestation, which encompasses all the components of a device in which the workload protects its data and use. And there is the hosting environment attestation, which is the parts of the device that host the workload but are not attested by the workload. And that would be TPM attestation, for instance. Or whatever this existing device that gives you like GPS coordinates in a trustworthy fashion. Whatever. That's still not part of the workload.
Yes. That's effectively you can call that as an underlying platform, which gives you the facilities to run your workload.
We'll need these terms defined, so we don't need to have these caveats and throat clearing every time. Like, what do we mean by all these things?
Yeah, so the attestation group is also obviously talking about what some of these names are done, and we just need to make sure that we all work together on this.
Right. Okay, so there's composite attestation. That was not part of the IETF. There is no draft that was presented, but there were a couple of side meetings just on that. That a bunch of people got in the room, and it was a very lively, very respectful, but very, very good, very cool discussion. And that's the one that's absolutely worth following. But that would be on the RATS mailing list. And I actually believe that the attestation SIG needs to be involved as well. In fact, primarily.
Yeah.
Right. So, Mike, that would be for you to perhaps broker that this is important. And finally, now there is a bunch of discussions on the RAS mailing list on dynamic reattestation of the workload on the code updates. And that's going to be
just to say, if you're giving me an action, please can we record it? Because otherwise I will lose.
Yes. So I guess the action for you, Mike, would be to help us broker the participation of the attestation SIG in make sure that attestation SIG is likewise involved with the RATS working group. So we speak with one voice as a consortium. And that may be attested TLS, that may be composite attestation, and they may also include all the considerations where your workload itself is dynamic.
Composite, dynamic,
the bottom three,
and attested TLS pieces.
Mark, just out of curiosity, where is dynamic reattestation of code updating? Where is that one picking from?
Dynamic reattestation. If you are, there is a bunch. So in my Gmail right now, I see, for instance, there is this whole email thread called TLS attestation and code updating.
Okay.
So they're starting to have these conversations, right? And also, like we talked about it in this SIG, we talked about what happens if I have this confidential VM, and how do I know what code is actually running? Because I tested early on in its lifetime, and then administrator comes in and starts messing with it, like the interactive admin logon. What exactly am I testing?
Okay. Maybe offline you can forward me that email. I'm not able to locate on my thread. I believe it's in the RATS working group you're talking about in that point.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Yeah, please, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, check your mail. I just sent it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, let's move on. I think.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so anyway, so I guess that is my recap from IETF. My head was exploding towards the end, but yeah, I'm very glad I went. All right, so my next bullet point here, I kind of already spoke to it. So we have the the attestation SIG, we have the RATS working group, and how, like, what is the approach that we take as the trustworthy workload identity SIG? And my proposed solution is through attestation SIG, we ensure that we influence the RATS working group as a consortium. I don't want to do it separately from identity perspective and attestation perspective. Mike, you still your hand up? Do you have something to say?
No, sorry, I forgot to
Okay.
write.
All right. So that's one proposal that I have, is we sort of ensure that this is how we engage with IETF. So again, one voice across two of our working groups. And that across both RATS and WIMSY working groups, we take pains to document what we see as workable solutions and ensure that they are both compatible with these architectures, and that, what was I going to say? I'm glitching. So I meant to say compatible with architectures, and also if changes are necessary, that we advocate for these changes. Okay, and my final bullet here was that we already have a number of issues that we're tracking. This is now in GitHub, so that's the link to GitHub. And additional issues should all go in there. And this is all I have for today. I guess I just want to open the floor for discussion. If you were ITF, what did you bring back? What is the most pressing thing for us to do going forward? Because we're now resuming our meetings.
So thanks, Mark. I was also there at ITF, and I was actually chairing the two side meetings, which Mark has already covered about composite attestation, and I would be driving that effort in RATS. And since being here as active as well, if anyone from this group wants to join the RATS mailing list and contribute there in composite attestation story, they are always welcome. That's what is my request.
I'm certainly interested, but we also need we will need someone from the attestation SIG as well. So,
Absolutely.
and that's where Mike can probably help us broker that.
I've just emailed Dan to see if he can help with that.
Okay, Zvonko.
One comment or question regarding the composite testers. I see we are always mentioning like VTPMs, but is there also discussion on if the VTPM is the right vehicle to do runtime measurements or runtime protection of measurements? Because I've seen some folks are also arguing that we should focus on RTMRs, for example, runtime measurement registers of TDX or other means that are not based on VTPM. Is there some discussions going on if VTPM is going to be the first implementation on how to do platform measurements, or are folks also discussing how to leverage RTMRs of different TEs?
I think what you just described is certainly in scope of that composite attestation story, because as Mark earlier mentioned, that the workload and the platform together brings an interesting combination of a composite attester. One is a workload as an attester and a platform as an attester. So it's a combination of two attesters joined together in the device. And VTPM being a perfect one specific use case where you would have a virtualized root of trust, VTPM, in a kind of a VM, basically, whether it is TDX VM, TDVM, or a CCA realm, CCA realm. So that's very much in scope. We have just started discussing, and on this, what we are doing is generalized principles which should be potentially applied to any of the compositions. And once this particular composition, which you just described, very much fits in the scope. So yes, this is something we would take into consideration when we do the design meetings starting next week. So
Right, because we have the hardware measurements and we have also various software measurements. So I would argue that we are not only like two testers and verifiers. It will be a combination of up to 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So there are going to be far more tester verifier pairs that need to be composited. Thinking of SBOMs for your rootfs, SBOMs for your containers, etc. So there's going to be far more components in there. And if you look at how many devices are going to be in TCB, like NICs, DPUs, and other accelerators, like Furiosa AI, for example, is enabling TEs on their NPUs.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Certainly very interesting use case you have brought into the mix, which I certainly would like you to, I would encourage you joining. I think Stephen Bollock from NVIDIA was also quite keen on joining. I'm not sure whether this is part of the same group or not, but
Yeah, Stephen Belloc and Fritz Alder is also from the networking BU. So yeah, let's see. I will sync up with them and see who is going to cover that, so that we make sure that
please,
we have,
any one of you, any one of three of you would join, would greatly help the discussion.
Yeah, I can do that because we have already a composite tester written for the confidential containers use case with GPUs and CPUs. So maybe we have some lessons learned from there and other way around. Okay, great. Yeah, I will join, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was in a meeting, well, I can't remember what it was. It may have been the Attestation SIG a week or so ago, where someone from Azure was saying that, you know, they've already got implementations which are possibly a bit naive, but they need to have something going, and so they're very keen that there should be conversations with standards creating folks, I guess, such as RATs, right, to ensure that we not only that we learn lessons from the people who have done it, but also that we can move things towards a situation which is going to be the best of possible worlds, rather than not learning the lessons or coming up with things which aren't going to work. So the Azure folks, I think, are pretty keen to be involved too.
Sure.
I agree on that, because you have different deployment models of your attestation pipeline. Because in the confidential containers, we have like ITA, we have the NRAS, the NVIDIA Remote Attestation Service, and then you're thinking about, okay, who is going to broker to whom? Because of all the different SLOs and SLAs, you cannot implement all the verifiers inside a one attestation pipeline, so you have to have components that are brokering. So there's also some discussions on how to really architect this model of who is brokering what, because, for example, for trusting confidential containers acts as a broker to ITA, and then ITA is brokering out to NRES, and how we are making sure that, all those components are doing the right thing, and how we are deploying all those stuff. As said before, background check model or passport model.
So
there's a lot of things.
I wanted to encourage you folks to do something that would probably be a very, very solid contribution to this working group. So if you remember, when we set out with our charter, we talked about code samples. And we also talked about producing the reference architecture. What would be fantastic to have is if we could, as we author the reference architecture, to reference from there saying, if you are interested in, I don't know, this profile of the architecture, doing things in this way, here is a code sample where this is done. If you think
Could you
about
say that
it,
again? I missed the last thing you
so
said.
what I'm saying is, so you say you go through our reference architecture that basically says, well, this is how you procure credentials for your workload in this particular situation, of which there'll be many. It would be fantastic to have a link to say, here's a code sample, here's some code that implements this variant of the reference architecture. So people who read the reference architecture don't need to guess. Or they will say, well, like just was discussed, if I'm doing confidential containers with, GPUs, well, this is how it's actually done. Go read that. I very much am a believer in grounding architecture in code. And
yeah, it makes sense.
That makes sense
I
if you have the open source contributions
Yeah.
like that where we can refer. I would fully
Yeah.
support you, Mark, on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I also have a use case where we need workload identities plus hardware software attestation. It's in the case of confidential overlay network where the workload spans a overlay network and you have a lighthouse which provides the certs only to verified attested identities so that your workload has a secondary confidential data plane, and then excluding the infrastructure data plane. But yeah, I can add some examples if
Yeah.
it's,
And
I think
yeah,
it
I
is
know
helpful.
everyone's super busy, but as you go through the reference architecture, if you, by the way, here's the document. And now let me drop the link in the chat. Um, this is it. Again, it's early days. There's a lot of stuff in it, but just put that. Sorry. But yeah, as you go through it, if you're aware of open source code snippets that illustrate a particular aspect of it, that would be very, very useful, just as a grounding mechanism. Okay. All right. What else is left for today? Okay. If not, I'm happy.
Yep.
If not, I'm happy to give folks some time back. I still want to, before we break, what should we be discussing this time next week? What progress can we make?
I think we should firm up the architecture, what you have just given, what the document you have shared. You do have any teething troubles, any questions, any gaps to fill on the architecture?
That would be fantastic, right? Just look through this and see, what scenarios are missing. Can we add swim lanes for those scenarios? Do you have any concerns with content as written? Right? It's never too early to start editing. And again, even if it's a vomit draft for a particular section, as I keep saying, you can't edit a blank page.
Yeah.
Right? So let's continue working on developing content, especially now that we've learned more things after IETF. That would be really good.
So I have to take issue with that. I think that it's like one hand clapping, right? You can edit a blank page in the same way that you can have one hand clapping. There's a koan, I'm sure, that we can create around that. Maybe here's not the place for that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having one of those days.
All right. If there's nothing else,
Thanks,
I'll
Chris.
see you guys this time next week. And
Thanks a lot.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
your
Bye.
thank you for your time. All right. Take care. Bye bye.